after that. They created some scene like that because when they tested it, that's when the arrows started going way, way up. That cool kind of low delivery. Thank you, Clint.
This is the story of Robert Urich, the rugged leading man who starred in 15 different television series across 3 decades, and his wife Heather Menzies, who captured hearts as Louisa Von Trapp in The Sound of Music. On screen, Robert played the tough guy, the private eye, the man who always came out on top, but behind the cameras, a battle far more intense than anything Hollywood could script was consuming his life. Standing beside him through every moment of that fight was Heather, a woman who would later face her own devastating diagnosis, and their story is one of love, loss, and a legacy that continues to touch lives today. From small-town Ohio to Hollywood, Toronto, Ohio sits along the banks of the Ohio River, a small working-class community where everybody knows your name and dreams of Hollywood seem impossibly far away. That's where Robert Urich's journey began, not in Toronto, Canada, as some might assume, but in this quiet corner of the Midwest. John Paul and Cecilia Monica Urich raised their son in the Byzantine Catholic faith, with Rusin and Slovak roots grounding him in values he carried throughout his life. From the start, Robert stood out as your classic all-American kid, an excellent athlete and natural leader with a charisma that set him apart even as a young man. A football scholarship brought him to Florida State University, where he played backup center on the team, and that's where he crossed paths with another young man destined for stardom, named Burt Reynolds. The friendship they formed would last a lifetime, and Reynolds would later play a major role in launching Robert's acting career. Football wasn't Robert's true calling though, and while he performed well on the field, his real talents lay elsewhere. Florida State gave him a degree in radio and television communications, and Michigan State followed with a master's degree in broadcast research and management. After finishing his education, voice lessons at the University of Chicago led to a sales job at WGN-TV in Chicago, where the pay came out to $150 a week. And that's when things got interesting, because Robert got fired. His employers discovered he'd been moonlighting, hustling on the side trying to break into acting, and the station didn't appreciate the divided loyalty. A brief stint as a weatherman followed, but the green screen wasn't his final destination. The turning point arrived after Robert performed in a Chicago stage production of The Rainmaker, alongside Burt Reynolds, who by then was becoming a Hollywood heavyweight. After watching Robert's performance, Burt pulled him aside with advice that would change everything: move to Los Angeles and give acting a real shot. That was all Robert needed to hear, and he packed his bags and headed west. The rise to television stardom. Los Angeles welcomed Robert with a guest spot on the FBI in 1972, and while it wasn't a major part, it got his foot in the door. A lead role in the television adaptation of Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice came the following year in 1973, which seemed like a big break until the show struggled in ratings and disappeared after only 6 episodes. That same year brought his film debut opposite Clint Eastwood in Magnum Force, the gritty sequel to Dirty Harry, where Robert played a motorcycle cop with a vigilante streak. The role was dark and intense, proving he could handle big-screen drama just as well as television. And then 1975 arrived with another twist of fate involving Burt Reynolds, who convinced television powerhouse Aaron Spelling to give Robert a shot at his new action series called S.W.A.T. The moment Robert read for the part, Spelling was hooked and cast him as Officer Jim Street, the young cool-headed cop in the elite tactical unit. S.W.A.T. started as a mid-season replacement but exploded with viewers, turning Robert into a television star almost overnight. Just as quickly as the show rose though, it fell, with critics slamming it for violence until the network canceled it in 1976. Still, Robert kept moving forward, landing a comedic turn on the hit sitcom Soap in 1977 as Peter the tennis player, followed by a role in Tabitha, the Bewitched spin-off, where he played Paul Thurston, a handsome self-absorbed talk show host. Poor scheduling killed Tabitha's momentum, and after 12 episodes, the show vanished in early 1978. Vega dollars and Golden Globe recognitions. 1978 brought the role that truly made Robert Urich a household name when he teamed up with Aaron Spelling again for Vega dollars, playing Dan Tana, a stylish private investigator solving crimes on the neon-soaked streets of Las Vegas. The setting was perfect for the late 1970s, glamorous and exciting with just enough danger, and Robert was perfect for Dan Tana. To embody the tough guy detective, he transformed himself physically at the gym, bulking up by 40 pounds of solid muscle from 180 to 220 pounds of lean on-screen power. When he stepped in front of cameras as Dan Tana, audiences saw a man who looked like he could handle himself in any situation. The result was immediate, with Vega dollars becoming a hit almost instantly, as viewers tuned in week after week to watch Dan Tana navigate the glittering, seedy underbelly of Las Vegas. Part of it was the glamorous backdrop with its casinos and showgirls. Part of it was the flashy cars and high-stakes action sequences, but most of it was Robert himself owning the role in a way few actors ever own their characters. 2 Golden Globe nominations followed, solidifying his place as one of the faces that defined an era of American television. What made Robert special was the warmth and humanity he brought to what could have been a one-dimensional tough guy, and fans couldn't get enough of him. By the 3rd season, though, ratings started sliding, and without strong network support, ABC pulled the plug in June 9. The lights of Vegas went dark for Dan Tana, but Robert Urich was far from finished with television stardom. Spenser, and continued success after Vega dollars ended. A deal with MGM aimed Robert toward film with Endangered Species in 1982, a science fiction thriller directed by Alan Rudolph that didn't set the box office on fire but marked a new chapter in his ambitions. Television kept calling him back though, first with Gavilan, where he played a former CIA agent turned oceanographer for 13 episodes before cancellation, and audiences just didn't connect with the concept despite its intriguing premise. 2 1984 films showcased his range in completely different directions. The Ice Pirates, an offbeat space comedy that developed a cult following over the years, and Invitation to Hell, a horror film from Wes Craven that leaned into the bizarre. Both were bold choices, proving Robert wasn't afraid to take risks with his career, though neither became major commercial successes. Turk 18 Tout came in 1985, a drama with heart that wasn't a box office smash, but that same year Robert struck gold again on television with Spenser for Hire. Based on Robert B. Parker's novels, Spenser was a different kind of detective, a former boxer and gourmet cook with a strict moral code who could throw a punch when necessary but preferred to outthink opponents. The character resonated with viewers in a way few television roles managed to achieve. 3 solid seasons from 1985 to 1988 captivated audiences, with Robert making Spenser feel real, like someone viewers might actually know. Chemistry between cast members was evident on screen, and the show developed a devoted following that demanded more. Even after the series ended its original run, the character had become too important to abandon, leading Robert to reprise Spenser in made-for-television movies throughout the 1990s, including Ceremony, Pale Kings and Princes, The Judas Goat, and A Savage Place. National Geographic Explorer added another dimension to his career starting in 1988, earning him a Cable Ace Award and proving he was more than just an action star with a more cerebral, curious side to his personality. The landmark miniseries Lonesome Dove followed in 1989, where his portrayal of Jake Spoon, a former Texas Ranger with a tragic arc, earned critical praise for its depth and emotional impact as the miniseries became a massive hit. The 1990s brought a string of short-lived shows and television movies, with American Dreamer in 1990, 83 Hours Till Dawn, and Crossroads in 1992, and a sitcom with Faye Dunaway called It Had to Be You in 1993 that flopped fast and lasted only 4 episodes before cancellation. The cancer diagnosis, The Lazarus Man, arrived in 1996, a Western drama that gave Robert one of his strongest roles in years, with viewers loving it enough for a second season renewal. Everything seemed to be falling into place after years of short-lived projects and near misses, and then came the devastating news that would change everything. Robert revealed publicly that doctors had diagnosed him with synovial sarcoma, a rare cancer attacking the soft tissues of the body. For a man whose career depended on his physicality and energy, whose on-screen presence demanded strength and vitality, the news was particularly cruel, but his response showed the world what kind of man he truly was. Most people would retreat and disappear from public view, focusing solely on survival while the cameras stopped rolling. But Robert didn't hide, and he didn't disappear. He faced the diagnosis with grit and grace, continued working as long as his body allowed, continued living fully, and began using his platform to help others facing the same terrifying battle. What happened next with the Lazarus Man still stings, because instead of supporting their star through his health crisis, Castle Rock Entertainment abruptly canceled the series without even asking if he could still work. Robert later called them out publicly, saying they just pulled the plug without giving him a chance to prove he could continue. The way they handled the situation left him bitter, and rightfully so. In 2000, he filed a lawsuit against Castle Rock for breach of contract, which settled privately, but the message was clear. Even while battling cancer, Robert Urich wasn't backing down from a fight against anyone who wronged him. His energy poured into cancer awareness, as he spoke publicly about early detection and research, becoming a voice for others facing similar battles who felt alone and afraid. The John Wayne Cancer Institute honored him with an award, and the Gilda Radner Courage Award recognized his strength and advocacy in spreading hope to cancer patients nationwide. Together with Heather, he launched the Urich Fund at the University of Michigan Comprehensive Cancer Center, channeling support into cancer research that could save future lives. After appearing on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, he donated his entire winnings of $125,000 directly to the fund, a gesture showing that even while fighting for his own survival, he thought constantly about helping others. By 1998, the battle seemed to be paying off, when doctors declared him cancer-free, and he became the national spokesperson for the American Cancer Society, using the platform to inspire and educate others. Work resumed immediately with Love Boat: The Next Wave, running 2 seasons on UPN, followed by his Broadway debut as the slick-talking lawyer Billy Flynn in Chicago, which he toured in 1999 and 2000, proving he still possessed the stage presence and charisma that made him a star in the first place. A 2001 sitcom called Emeril, built around chef Emeril Lagasse, became his last television series, when breathing complications brought him to Los Robles Hospital and Medical Center in Thousand Oaks, California, just a week before his death. On April 16, 2002, Robert Urich passed away at 55 years old, surrounded by his wife Heather and their 3 children after 6 years of fighting. A funeral mass at St. Charles Borromeo Church in North Hollywood followed on April 19, with his ashes later interred at the family's vacation home in Prince Edward County, Ontario, Canada, where a quiet memorial now stands in the Westlake Church of Christ Cemetery as a peaceful tribute to a man who gave everything he had, both on screen and off. Heather Menzies, from Sound of Music to Soulmate. Understanding Robert's story requires understanding the woman who stood beside him through it all, the woman whose own life story was equally compelling. Heather Margaret Menzies was born in Toronto, Canada, on December 30 to Scottish parents who immigrated after World War II, with her father working as a struggling artist trying to make ends meet. By 14, she'd lived in Vancouver, Miami, London, and Southern California, as the family moved frequently, eventually settling in the Los Angeles area, where she graduated from John Burroughs High School in Burbank in 1967, before studying acting at Falcon Studios. Her first screen appearance came in 1964 on The Farmer's Daughter, but the following year changed everything when she was cast as Louisa Von Trapp in The Sound of Music at just 14 years old with no formal acting experience whatsoever. A teenager with no training suddenly thrust into a major Hollywood production alongside Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer, where the pressure must have been immense. Yet Heather rose to the occasion and held her own among the talented cast. Singing in iconic numbers like So Long, Farewell, and The Lonely Goatherd, her face became part of one of cinema's most enduring images, the Von Trapp children lined up in matching outfits singing farewell to party guests, songs that have been heard by hundreds of millions worldwide. During the famous rowboat scene, where the children tumbled out of a boat into the water, Heather became an unexpected hero when young Chaim Karoth, who played the youngest Von Trapp child Gretel, fell into the water and couldn't swim. Without hesitation, Heather jumped in and rescued her, a moment audiences never saw on camera, but one that revealed who she truly was, someone who acted instantly when others needed help. That instinct to help others would define the rest of her life in ways no one could have predicted. Television work followed her Sound of Music fame, with appearances on Bonanza, Dragnet, Alias Smith and Jones, Room 2020, Marcus Welby MD, T.J. Hooker, and even Vega alongside her husband, where audiences got to see the real-life couple together on screen. Her most notable television role was Jessica 6, in the science fiction series Logan's Run from 1977 to 1978, a cult favorite that still has fans today, while films included Hawaii, How Sweet It Is, Piranha, and Endangered Species with Robert. A 1973 Playboy pictorial titled Tender Trap playfully nodded to her wholesome Sound of Music image, showing a very different side of the former child star. The Urich children and family legacy. Parenthood didn't come easy for the couple, and the road to building their family was paved with heartbreak before joy arrived. Multiple miscarriages led Robert and Heather to adoption, a painful journey many couples understand all too well. Through that difficulty came 3 children who would become the center of their lives and the carriers of their legacy. Ryan and Emily arrived in 1978 and 1980, with a third child, Allison Grady Urich, adopted in 1998 after Robert's cancer diagnosis, proving that even facing his own mortality couldn't stop him from opening his heart and home to another child in need. In an industry where absent fathers are common and work schedules and egos often come before family, Robert made his children a priority every single day. He attended events, celebrated achievements both large and small, and was simply there when they needed him. That consistent presence shaped their family in ways that became clear during the hardest times they would face together. Ryan has spoken publicly about a father who valued connection over correction, painting a picture of a man who parented with intention and love. When Ryan got in trouble at school, Robert didn't scold him or lecture from above, but got down on the floor at eye level with his son and gently opened the door to conversation, wanting to understand rather than simply discipline. With his daughters, Robert brought that same attentiveness, celebrating even the smallest milestones with genuine pride that made each child feel seen and valued. Even in his final days, when illness had weakened him almost completely, Robert found energy to play with Allison just days before her 4th birthday, refusing to let sickness steal those precious moments. The cancer stretched across 6 years with 3 separate diagnoses that each brought new battles to fight. Surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation took his hair but never his determination or his spirit. When the cancer returned during Ryan's last year of high school, the disease had grown fiercer and more aggressive, with Robert's body becoming sensitive to even the smallest movement as the treatments took their toll. Ryan drove his father to chemotherapy appointments with painstaking care, avoiding every bump in the road to shield him from pain, understanding that even small jolts caused suffering. Robert's death in 2002 came while Ryan was studying biology in college, and the experience of watching his father suffer while feeling helpless to do anything became a turning point that would shape the rest of his life. Grief channeled into purpose, leading Ryan to become an infectious disease specialist, now working with Lovelace Medical Group in New Mexico. He realized that with a medical degree, even if he couldn't save his own dad, he could save someone else's father, someone else's husband, someone else's hero. Emily found her calling in medicine too, working today as an emergency room nurse, and neither of their career paths was random or coincidental. They were shaped directly by witnessing cancer's brutality and the compassion their parents showed through it all. Of the 3 children, Ryan was the only one who initially showed interest in following his parents into acting, appearing in projects including Night Walk and The Killer Inside, before walking away from the entertainment industry entirely to pursue medicine. Emily and Allison have chosen quieter lives outside the public eye, away from the spotlight that defined their parents' careers. After Robert's death, Heather dedicated herself fully to continuing his mission and honoring his memory through action. She founded the Robert Urich Foundation, devoting her remaining years to raising money for cancer research and supporting patients and families navigating the same painful road her own family had traveled. What many don't know is that Heather had already survived ovarian cancer years earlier, an experience that only deepened her personal resolve to fight the disease and help others facing similar battles. November 2017 brought devastating news when Heather was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, a cruel twist for a woman who had dedicated so much of her life to fighting the disease that took her husband. Just weeks later, on Christmas Eve, December 24, 2017, Heather passed away at 68 years old, surrounded by the family she and Robert had built together. Ryan's statement described her as an actress and ballerina who loved living life to the fullest, noting she was not in any pain but had had enough nearly 4 weeks after diagnosis, taking her last breath at 7:22 in the evening, finally at peace. Burt Reynolds, A Friend's Contrast. Robert's story wouldn't be complete without the friend who helped launch his career, the man who believed in him when nobody in Hollywood knew his name. Burt Reynolds met Robert as a young football player at Florida State in the early 1960s, when neither of them could have imagined the fame awaiting them or the very different paths their lives would take. Burt encouraged the move to Los Angeles and convinced Aaron Spelling to give Robert the S.W.A.T. audition that changed everything, opening doors that might have stayed closed forever. Without that friendship and those open doors, Robert's path to stardom might have looked completely different, and the two remained close for decades through all the ups and downs of Hollywood life. While Robert was admired for his humility, kindness, and devotion to family and philanthropy, Burt lived a far more turbulent life, especially regarding his romantic relationships, and the contrast between the two friends became striking and instructive over the years. Reynolds' marriage to actress Lonnie Anderson made them a tabloid dream in the 1980s, with him as the mustachioed star of Smokey and the Bandit, one of the biggest box office draws of his era, and her as the glamorous blonde from WKRP in Cincinnati, adored for her comedic timing and looks. Together they represented the ideal Hollywood couple, at least on the surface, and their 1988 wedding was as extravagant as the public expected, but behind closed doors, the marriage was deeply troubled from the start. Arguments, clashing egos, and infidelity allegations unraveled things quickly until Reynolds filed for divorce in 1993, sparking one of Hollywood's messiest and most expensive splits that became tabloid fodder for months. Reynolds claimed Anderson was reckless with money and contributed to his growing financial problems, while Anderson countered with accusations of emotional and physical abuse that shocked their fans. The media's obsession with their fallout only intensified the damage to both of their reputations and careers. $10 million is what Anderson reportedly walked away with in the settlement, including alimony and prime real estate. And for Reynolds, it marked the beginning of a downward spiral he couldn't escape. Chapter 11 bankruptcy came in 1996 with debts reaching $10 million. And despite being one of Hollywood's most bankable stars just a decade earlier, Reynolds publicly admitted borrowing money from friends to keep up with alimony payments, a humiliating admission for a man who once seemed to have everything. Another legal battle followed with longtime girlfriend Pamela Seals, after their decade-long relationship ended in a bitter dispute that exploded into a lawsuit. Reynolds accused her of extortion through threatened false accusations if he didn't agree to generous financial terms, with Seals demanding half of his Florida home, support for herself and her mother, and additional compensation. At 68 years old, Reynolds offered a $1 million settlement she refused, and his lawyer Bob Montgomery noted this was yet another difficult chapter in what had become a complicated personal life, even though the actor had managed to recover somewhat from his earlier financial troubles. While his on-screen charisma remained undeniable through iconic films like Deliverance, Smokey and the Bandit, and Boogie Nights, Reynolds' off-screen life was marked by costly relationships, high-profile legal battles, and years of financial instability that never seemed to end. Robert quietly battled cancer with dignity and left behind a legacy of integrity and purpose, while Burt's personal life often played out like a cautionary tale about fame, money, and poor choices in love. Reynolds remained a beloved screen icon whose talent was never in question, but his name was as often associated with scandal as it was with achievement. Robert and Heather's story stands apart as something different from the usual Hollywood tale of fame and fortune. A story about facing the worst life throws at you and choosing to help others along the way. About a marriage lasting through success and failure, health and sickness, the highest highs and lowest lows that any couple could experience. Two people confronted with their own mortality decided not to retreat into self-pity, but to leave the world better than they found it, and that choice defined the final chapters of both their lives. Their legacy lives on in concrete ways through the Robert Urich Foundation, supporting cancer research and patients who face the same battles they faced, through scholarships and research funds bearing their names at the Eccles Performing Arts Center in Park City High School in Utah, and the University of Michigan's Sarcoma Research Program, where scientists continue working toward better treatments and cures. Ryan, Emily, and Allison carry forward the values their parents instilled in them: compassion, strength, and service to others, living proof that Robert and Heather's influence extends beyond their lifetimes. 15 television series across 3 decades made Robert a fixture in American living rooms, and Golden Globe nominations along with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 7083 Hollywood Boulevard, cemented his place in entertainment history. For years he remained the only person with a last name starting with U on the entire Walk of Fame until Usher joined him. In his hometown of Toronto, Ohio, a highway interchange now bears his name, honoring the small-town kid who made it to the top. Critics praised his work and audiences genuinely loved him for decades, but his greatest role was always the one he played off-screen: devoted husband, loving father, and a man who absolutely refused to let cancer define him or diminish his spirit. Heather, the young girl who rescued a castmate from drowning during The Sound of Music without thinking twice, spent her final years doing what she had always done since childhood: helping others, advocating for those who couldn't advocate for themselves, and honoring the memory of the man she loved. The measure of a life isn't fame or fortune, isn't awards or accolades or box office numbers, it's the lives touched and the love left behind. And Robert and Heather Urich touched many lives with love that continues rippling outward today. If this story moved you, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. Drop a comment below and let us know what you thought about Robert Urich and Heather's incredible journey together. Your likes and shares help us bring more stories like this one to life. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.